confusion as a in. Yes, confusion as a in. I just say, just say, a bufferman woman dreaming. Nya. Woman say, John Dramen Mahama. Ye nyanto abano campaign on the church so na let say teacher training nursing allowances I just say for na just say omo kan ho nsem say ba ombetimi ahyemu kina ombetimi kina just say just say ombetimi kina ama just say akona nim just say bia pay no ba bia be kosoro aka na we na just say for nana akomia any uncle akwasi prat ekopimo Peace FM front page of daily graphic and that was say Haruna Iddrisu appointed Dixon Emma education minister Eddie abeto front page and that was say Haruna Iddrisu omobeyi teacher training allowance etime efriwo ama say bet now Haruna Iddrisu emba bonti ebeyi na no but within front page in the daily graphic de betu dwa no ometima quote words of Haruna Iddrisu ama say for na akomia and say na uncle akwesi price say madwini na ebo match so omede nsi bebre na to dwa efa join the campaign messaging of John Dramen Mahama omo activity to ja say a bad deal omo say teacher training allowances no months na be na mayede o mayede hwe omo shimu kina ama say for ama be ya ade be da honum but this be see switch say for ensem eboba no ano din yipa anko akwesi prat ene nana akomini na de omano to ja ase na tekuna no nso eka ho omo de omanu etudwa intenti for yen sebre no yenkoti nsem ayere obli tudwa na embra ne agi emu nchechiremu yipa embrensia yepa edi akena betom so mema we mfi se ahaye Taxo TV be subscribe like na be share video we amobenye bi ahwe we anado sabo adoma na eda so se me edi simbre ebetudwa benye bi ahwe yenkomrensia yeba edi akena betom so seni edi brother yem
once you be trouble.
Oh, okay. So the headline is
sorry now. I agree. As a entry, so the Minister of Education, Haruna Iddrisu, has announced plans to transition teacher training allowances teacher training allowances into an enhanced student loan scheme to allow students to cater for their own feeding and personal expenses. Next paragraph. The minister explained that while the allowances will be maintained in the interim, the government intended to phase the allowance system out gradually. Next paragraph. There is no way you should be feeding a student at the tertiary level. Emphasis. We can narrow feeding to basic and free senior high schools, but at the tertiary level, students should be able to take care of themselves. In the interim, we will continue with feeding allowances, but we will transition to an enhanced student loans system. And so, okay, it's very confusing.
Of as I caught when you can 2 paragraphs come.
The minister said this one. The team was led by so. The meeting provided the platform for the principals to voice their challenges and explore strategies to enhance learning outcomes, improve quality of education, and enhance.
Second paragraph.
The loan scheme will be run parallel. The loan scheme will be run parallel with the allowances initially, but will eventually adopt the standard practice in all tertiary institutions where students rely on loans instead of direct allowances. So, okay, we have impression that it's not talking about teacher training allowances. It's talking about allowances for tertiary students. Of course, teacher trainees, some of them will fall into the category of tertiary students.
This is colleges of education.
Yes.
University.
Tertiary students have more allowances.
Okay, you get the impression.
So, say omoji allowance.
Omo
And as I
mo
said,
so-
omo training colleges.
No,
for
tertiary students. They can't tertiary. Tell Kwesi. How much allowances?
to say universities.
Yeah, how much allowances? They just teacher training colleges. Teacher training colleges only at tertiary institutions.
Masa, report your hand and me here.
Enfa now can you also say tertiary, not teacher training? Enfa.
Oh, that be a
But
question
I
cancer.
want to.
No, share me particular paragraph. No. Because now can you it is about teacher training allowances, not tertiary. Not tertiary. Now can you teacher training allowances, not tertiary. Oh, now mention na me then. O da share me be okay.
Me makai the money na.
But there's confusion.
Na me huno.
But
There's a lot of confusion.
Me
in this
huno
report.
type my head no. Me yam shame.
okay.
But
me go to the minister for the very first paragraph. Now first paragraph in the boss the Minister for Education has announced plans to transition teacher trainee allowances into enhanced student loan scheme to allow the students cater for their Eiii. Any final cancer or confusion about teacher training?
It's not just talking about general allowance. It's talking about feeding allowance.
But then you are teacher training. Because tertiary students don't get allowances.
Okay, baby, or say they will phase the allowance system out gradually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he will continue with the feeding allowance. Kopim say omo ebeka say we die nkofo atiase yenko enhanced loan no e de omo beto aso ama omo allowance ni feeding.
The minister can say you beto aso kosi say students nankasa ebe choose
option.
It's a very confusing report.
Head them no. A
very confusing report.
But heading here is very clear. Even from the story, the allowances are going to go. Clear from the story. There will be
which allowance? Which allowance?
Teacher training allowance.
Your baby is referring to feeding allowance.
An allowance is on the other. Almost feeding on the other. An allowance is
there is no way you should be feeding a student at the tertiary level. We can narrow feeding to basic and free senior high school.
Okay.
But at the tertiary levels, students should be able to take care of themselves. In the interim, we will continue with the feeding allowances, but we transition to an enhanced student loan scheme. That's one part. So it's specific feeding. But
there's nothing like feeding allowance. It's just allowance. Because it's just allowance. Allowance, you use it for feeding and use it for yourself.
But Nana,
for feeding and for yourself.
Yeah. Allowance is more the other.
For feeding and for yourself.
Yes.
So there's a distinction
between the allowances.
Feeding and yourself.
No, the allowance. I mean, just see a chip is a way for feeding and a way for transport. Yeah, they don't do that. They give you the allowance.
The minister, no?
Oh, send there for emphasis.
The part of the allowance.
But I'm saying that the story is clear. The allowance will go. That's the story. That's the gravamen of the story.
No,
and
that's
gradually.
Yeah, and it's a process.
And as an option, and so on.
Then you have the allowance, and then the loan as an option.
Masa.
And when final your option?
Wow.
Allowance now so trim then it me option. It's not available.
Also full or they will go in.
I'll say that stated that the student loan would operate alongside the allowance for a short period to give students the option before the full transition. So he's talking about transition. I mean, of course, story could have been written better, but the clear government is that the teacher training allowances are going to go.
You are in my domain.
And you're dying.
You are talking about journalism and story writing. You are in my domain. Where I am here all my life. This is what I study. So there is confusion in this story. Lots of confusion in this story.
But you agree that it's about student teacher training allowance?
Not alone.
Which will
the
go.
minister refers to tertiary. Because
teacher training institutions are tertiary institutions.
Fantastic. But it is not only teacher training tertiary. There are other tertiary educations. Students are
which ones?
Loans.
Not allowances.
Yes.
Which ones?
I will not be able to tell you offhand. But there were nurses. There were nurses. there were some technical trainees near there, almost the allowance. I'm sure say eventually we'll get to know. What I'm saying is a McCann story where I should have a clear picture as to what the story is saying. It is not here. It's not clear.
Sorry, it could have been tidier. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not clear at all.
About
Anna, baby, opening the shows are okay.